Order, Sioux Falls City Council informational meeting, Tuesday, December 8th. Okay. Our first item today will be a presentation from our city clerk, Lori Hogstead, on municipal election handbook and campaign finance reporting.
Thank you, Council Chair, for allowing me to go first. We just need to cover the office, so I will make this quick. On the agenda tonight, we have an ordinance that will be adopting the election booklet for the 2016 election. And I'm just briefly going to go through the booklet. This will be for the election of April 12, 2016, with a possible secondary election on May 3rd. We adopted in November, the council adopted an ordinance that revised Chapter 38, which is our elections chapter in our City Code of Ordinances. And within that adoption of that ordinance, it does state that the City Council may adopt specific filing guidelines. And we are using this campaign booklet we're incorporating the various deadlines that are required for campaign financing, et cetera, which will then, as City Attorney Fifely states, it have the force of law for those items to be done at that time. And I'll just briefly go through what will be in the booklet. There's the cover, and you've all got a sample at your desk, although it's very much reduced, so if you can't read it, I understand. I do have full-size pages available. The first section is municipal election information, and the first item we'll have is the candidate election calendar. And actually, Jim, would you mind just putting that up for a moment? The candidate election calendar is very comprehensive, as you can see, and it gives the deadline date, what the topic is, and then the South Dakota Codified Law reference or the Sioux Falls City Ordinance reference. So it's very comprehensive for the candidates to be able to see the different due dates for their items. Thank you, Jim. And we'll just go back to, thank you. All right, also included in that will be frequently asked questions, and these are questions that have been compiled over the years, and we add to those each election. Also campaign sign regulations. In campaign sign regulations, we used to use a brochure, but I wanted to incorporate it in the booklet, and this is an example just of that page, for instance, that we had to put it into an 8.5 by 11 format so that it fits right into the booklet and explains what the different requirements are for signs. And then also as part of the campaign finance, as part of the general election booklet, we have information on assemblies, parades, processions, as well as ethics violations. The next section is the specific campaign finance reporting guidelines, which includes an introduction, various financial records that need to be maintained, the contribution limits. If you recall, when we adopted the ordinance in November, there was a really nice chart that I put together that explained all the contribution limits. That will be part of the booklet, as well as specific filing deadlines. And then, as Jim is putting up, we will have various financial campaign disclosure statement documents that are part of this, and these all came from the Secretary of State's office, and they prepared them. As you can see at the top, it states for local jurisdictions. And so that's been a really nice partnership working with the Secretary of State. The forms look very professional. I worked on them to set them up so that we're able to just go into fields and enter the information if you wish to enter it online. And also we do have the forms available if you wish to write the information in person. So those will be available to the candidates on our website as well as distributed to them. Also, we will have the nominating petition sample and instructions as part of the booklet. We'll include our newly adopted city ordinances for Chapter 38, so they'll be able to see everything that's in that chapter. And of course, importantly, we will have Chapter 1227, which is the state law referencing campaign finance. Also the district map, as we will have 3 district positions available for this next election, and then the candidates will be aware of that. And in addition to that, we will have the forms such as Jim just showed you, the statement of organization, statement of financial interest, campaign finance disclosure statement, and the communication statement. So all of this will be incorporated into the book. It's just about 70 pages, and I'm going to have them bound, like comb bound, so that they're easy to look through. I think they'll be a great resource for our candidates, and it was long overdue for an update, so I'm happy to have this to present to you for first reading tonight. Second reading will be on 12/15, and then they would be ready to distribute to our candidates in early January. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, I will be here tonight as well.
Questions from the council? Seeing none, we'll move along. We have city council open discussion. Do we have any items for open discussion at this time? Councilor Kiley.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to announce once again that next week, December 15th, during the Land Use Committee, we will be discussing what we've been referring to as the Boulevard issue. And we're going to start off, well, actually, there's 2 items on the agenda for land use. So once the first agenda item has been discussed by city staff, which is not related to boulevards, we will get into the boulevard issue, which is item number 2, and we're going to start by taking input from the public immediately at that particular point in time. So if you have an interest in the boulevards, then please come forward, pro or con. We'd love to hear from you, with the idea then that in January we're going to come back with maybe more specifics on our part. And there might even be the opportunity for city staff to make comments as well next week. So I would encourage anybody who has an interest in that topic to please attend next week.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilor Kiley? Councilor Jameson?
I just wanted to add as well that, we found that sometimes the hour of 4:30 or so may not work for everybody, but they're sure welcome to come at any 7 o'clock meeting between now and then and forever when, to give us their give us their input. They can do it by email, they can call us. I've already received some calls on it, so don't feel as though the only opportunity is at that work land use committee meeting at that hour. There are other ways and other times available to the public.
It's a good point.
Thank you. I've also received a few phone calls on that, and we're looking for the public's input, so thank you.
Well, and I just might say too, just a little bit, that we're actually trying to be more flexible with our approach towards the boulevard. So there's kind of the perception that we're going the other way, and indeed we are not. So please come with an open mind, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay. Any other items for open discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's go to our next presentation, 2015 National Arts and Humanities Youth Program Award, and we'll have Larry Toll lead off.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, and that's all I'm going to do tonight is actually introductions, because if you were to ask what I had to do with all of what we've been able to accomplish, I would tell you that Roseanne Hofflin, who is our Community Learning Center director, was going to leave when I took over 6 years ago and was looking for work outside of town. I convinced her to stay, and from then on, all I did was support her and stay out of her way. So what you see up there is a picture Roseanne and Jovian Ababakar, who are with us this evening, were at the White House on the 17th of November and received one of 12 awards from Michelle Obama. So we're very, very proud of her. But let me have Roseanne tell you a little bit about it, and then we will have Jovian come up, and she is also known as Juju. So Roseanne?
Thank you, Larry.
Well, good afternoon. Juju and I were honored to represent the Washington Pavilion and to accept the National Arts and Humanities Youth Program Award at the White House from First Lady Michelle Obama last month. This award is the nation's top honor for after-school arts and humanities programs. It is presented by the President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities in partnership with the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. We were honored as one of the top 12 awardees this year, as Larry said, from all throughout the nation. And we are the first South Dakota program to ever be awarded or to reach the top 50 nominees. Every week, the Action Arts and Science program of the Washington Pavilion sends 13 passionate educators out into the community to work with students who need us the most. We visit 21 different after-school sites where we work with youth who come from area Title I schools. We are at 10 elementary schools every week with the Kids Inc. program, 3 middle schools with the YMCA after-school program. We're at the Juvenile Detention Center, the Volunteers of America Bowdoin Youth Center, and the Heisler Chemical Dependency Unit for Youth, 2 Youth Enrichment Services sites, the Multicultural Center, Kids Stop, and the Kids Count after-school program. In partnership with all of these important after-school programs, we bring hands-on art and science activities to over 500 Sioux Falls students every week. Children that have limited access and exposure to extracurricular activities thrive under this program, where the integration and inherent nature of arts and science transcends language and culture, and it inspires our diverse community of students. Our wonderful student representative, who you'll meet in a little bit, Juvian, participated in the program as a middle schooler at the Multicultural Center. She and her family were new to Sioux Falls and the United States, recently coming from Turkey. She didn't speak much English when she was a part of the Action Arts and Science program, but to participate, communicate, and connect with her instructor and fellow students, she didn't need words. She utilized her artistic ability and her interest, and her language skills improved. And she continued to deepen her appreciation and involvement in the arts. This hardworking, inspirational young lady is now a regular volunteer at the Pavilion, a member of our Dakota Academy of Performing Arts, which brings theater out to elementary schools all throughout the area. And she is one of the leaders of the Lincoln High School Oral Interp team, which is a national award-winning program. Through positive adult mentorship and engaging projects, the Washington Pavilion Action Arts and Science program brings unique and inspiring possibilities to students every week, where they discover and explore new subjects in a safe and comfortable environment. What do Mars and marbled paper have to do with each other? How do we connect geometry with Picasso? What do seismic waves look like? These are just some of the questions explored through the hands-on learning this semester by participants in this program. The skills of collaboration, creativity, communication, problem solving, and analysis are critical to preparing students for the working world. And the hands-on projects the students are exposed to with the Washington Pavilion program have the unique ability to encourage these skills through artistic design and through scientific inquiry. The Washington Pavilion program empowers students to take on challenges and prepares them for successful adulthood and lifelong appreciation for arts and science. The development not only has a positive impact on the students as individuals, but I believe it benefits the Sioux Falls community now and into the future. I think of a young lady, Amber, who never missed a day of our program when we were in her middle school for 3 years. She had a tough transition into middle school. She hadn't really found her place, and her whole course changed through involvement with this Pavilion program. From a shy student who hadn't shown interest in sports or other after-school opportunities, Amber found her inspiration in science. Her grades and her confidence improved. She is actively pursuing every opportunity in science she now has, and she has a clear path for the future. This past summer, she was a regular member of our Science Center volunteer squad. If you ask her about her future, she will tell you that she is going to start working in the Science Center once she turns 16 so she can save money for college because she wants to major in neuroscience so she can go on to be a professor, neuroscientist, and an author. Juju and Amber are just 2 of the students whose stories fuel our work and speak to the power of this program and the amazing potential of our wonderful Sioux Falls youth. It was an honor and a privilege to accept the award on behalf of the many individuals and the organizations who work to make this important program possible. As a nonprofit, the Washington Pavilion Management, Inc. works to fundraise to support important programs like Action Arts and Science. While this program has been in existence since 1999 when the Pavilion opened its doors, 4 years ago we were very blessed to receive a grant from the South Dakota Department of Education, the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant, which allows us to offer this program at no charge to the students or the programs that we bring it to every week. I want to acknowledge the city for its support of the Pavilion. The vision of the citizens and leaders of Sioux Falls to establish and maintain our beautiful facility that serves as a cultural hub for science and for art is positive, it's impactful, and it's important for the youth of our community. So thank you to the citizens and leadership of the City of Sioux Falls for your support of the Pavilion, and we share this national honor with you, and we thank you. And I want to invite Juju up just to talk about the White House a little bit and her experience with Action Arts and Science.
Hi, my name is Juviana Babakar. I prefer Juju because it's really hard to say, Juvian. And I was involved in a program when I was in middle school. Now I'm a senior at Lincoln High School. And when I was in the program, I used to go to, I was in the after-school program, and they only came once a week, and I would look forward to that day every day because I couldn't communicate with anyone because I didn't speak the language. And now I am the speech captain, and I think most of that is because of the program. I was an artist, and I would draw and communicate through my art and express myself through that, and it encouraged me to speak up and be who I am. I don't think I would have been where I am without the program. It helps a lot of kids, and I think more people should know about it. Thank you.
Any questions from the council? Councilor Jamison.
Juju, if you could come back up. Is that right, Juju?
Yes.
I won't even try your last name. All I can say is I think your English is very good now. You're doing great.
Thank you.
And captain of the speech team, is that what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm.
What a great story. Thank you for bringing this forward to us, and Larry and all your staff. That's just great news. So, but on going to the White House, when you were in the White House, how was your interaction with the First Lady? How did that go?
So we were guaranteed a hug from the from the First Lady, and as I stepped up, she said, the first thing she said to me was, "Oh my God, your eyes are beautiful and big." And I said, "Thank you," and I was shaking, and then she said, "I'm really proud of you for being here, and keep doing what you're doing." And I think of that sometimes.
Good for you. That's pretty good inspiration. Well, just on behalf of the City Council, thank you and congratulations to everybody.
Thank you.
Kylie?
Well, you are a wonderful example of the youth in our community, and this particular program is pretty dear to my heart as a lifelong educator. Congratulations on your award, and also on the efforts of Amber in this program as well. You have done a lot to be proud of, and you have represented the city of Sioux Falls very well. We are very proud of you. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and it's concerning your trip to the White House and meeting First Lady Michelle Obama. Now, this afternoon, you have the opportunity to meet the Sioux Falls City Council. Pray tire. No, you don't have to answer that because I know the answer. So congratulations, and I would agree. Keep on doing what you're doing, please.
Thank you. I will.
Councilor Rolfing.
Juju, this is a great honor for us too, and for Larry and everybody. And but I want to, instead of looking back to what happened, I want to look to the future. What's next? Are you going to go to college someplace?
I am hoping to do 2 years of Augustana and then 2 years of U of M in mathematics and theater, which is what the...
Two good choices there. Just stay with those.
Thank you. And the program is actually arts and science, so I'm going for theater and mathematics, so I think it kind of does tie back to it.
You're going to be one of those people that wrecked the curve like I didn't like in college, but that's okay. You keep doing it because it's important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the council? Juju, thank you very much.
Thank you for...
Larry Toll, I want to say thank you to you and the pavilion. People of Sioux Falls, this is our building. We always ask what's going on in there and why and justify the expense. Here's one of those reasons. So pay attention. There's a lot of things happening there, and I think that there's going to be more in the future.
We'll leave a stack, some of these brochures for you so you have one and you can keep a picture of Juju and be able to say, you were with. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support. Yes.
All right, moving on. Our next presentation will be Lease with the Stockyards Plaza, Inc., and Don Kearney, Director of Parks and Recreations, will lead it off.
Well, good afternoon, City Council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Rec. We're really excited to be able to present this proposed lease agreement with Stockyards Plaza, Inc. in the City of Sioux Falls. With me today are some folks that have done some heavy lifting on this particular project. We're going to walk through the presentation, but by all means, the real experts on this are Jim Wooster and Susan Randall, who are with us today, as well as I'd like to also recognize Mike Patton. Mike's a capital development specialist with us and has worked through this agreement with Susan and Jim and has done a nice job as well. So with that, I want to talk about some of the goals that the Stockyard Plaza Inc. has for this particular project. One of the goals is to preserve the history and the legacy of the Sioux Falls Stockyards. As we all know, it closed down several years ago, and I think ever since then they've been on a mission to preserve that history. And not only the Stockyards complex itself, but the complex's impact on agriculture and the economy of the region. We really want to showcase the continuing story of agriculture's provision of food from farm to table, educate about the regional agriculture's relationship with the world, and create a fun, interactive learning environment for people of all ages. As we all know, Falls Park is a hotbed of activity, and this would just be another great amenity within the park. So the proposed lease that we are presenting to you today is a 3-year term with options to extend for 2 additional 3-year terms. We do have a capital project in the 5-year capital plan in 2016 that would make some renovations to the horse barn. As we all know, that barn is pre-1900s, and it obviously is reflected in some of the condition of that building. And so these are some of the improvements we think are a great investment, whether we were doing a lease with Stockyards Plaza as proposed or not. It just needs some enhancements. And so we are looking at making some architectural upgrades, some mechanical upgrades, electrical upgrades, and really kind of bringing up the building up to code. One of the provisions within the lease as proposed is we are proposing that we would allow them to charge $3 for adults, $1 for children, and anybody 6 and under would be free to use the facility. Some of our responsibilities, our primary responsibility is to make those building upgrades in the 5-year capital plan. And then a typical criteria that we have in most of our agreements is that anything that would happen to the building that's in excess of $250 would be the city responsibility. But if there's, a toilet needs to be replaced for something less than that, then that's their responsibility. Some of the responsibilities for Stockyards Plaza Inc. include operating the museum to tell the story of the Stockyards. They were also agreeable to fronting the cost of all the design and construction administration associated with the renovations to the project, which is estimated at about $25,000. They would also be responsible for the utilities, Wi-Fi, telephone, and email service within the building, and so they're essentially picking up the tab for operating that facility. The other thing that they're doing is working with Stockyards Heritage Museum, or excuse me, Siouxland Heritage Museums on the displays for the horse barn itself. They estimate that value is about $75,000. And then they would not only purchase, but they would also insure, own, and maintain all those exhibits. They do anticipate that it would be about $100,000 annual operating costs that they would raise on an annual basis to support the operations and the hours of the actual horse barn itself. And those hours would mirror those of the visitor center. As we talked about, the building is getting on in years, and so we do plan to do those building code upgrades, some of the interior finishes, paint, replacing some of the plumbing fixtures, some of those things that are pretty worn and pretty tired. Mechanical, plumbing, electrical, there are a couple spots where we need to, there's a little daylight showing through the building, and so we want to do some enhancements to try to fix some of those things too. So on this next slide, I know some of these graphics are hard to make out, but on the upper level, you would see the history of the Sioux Falls Stockyards. It would have interactive touch screens, and then it would also really have firsthand stories and accounts of the stockyards themselves. Nothing's better than hearing somebody that used to work there about the experiences they had down there. So that's what the second level would consist of. And then on the lower level, they would have really the ag experience. You know, more and more folks aren't exposed to what it is like to live on a farm and what the whole cycle of farm to market consists of. We talk about the different products associated with agriculture, both organic and local agriculture, and really nice displays and exhibits so people kind of learn about farming and what it means to really have an ag experience. So here's another graphic that really kind of illustrates what's envisioned for this area. You know, as you know, the horse barn is a barn, and so it will continue to look like a barn on the inside just because of the roof structure itself. And so we'll maintain that feel, but in the exposed beams and rafters, and so it'll give you a little flavor for what you might see when you walk in. Here's another neat interpretive, another example of that. You know, what are the different cuts of meat on a hog, for example? What are the things that you feed those livestock? It'll have multimedia photo areas for pictures of different photo opportunities for folks that visit. You know, corn and soybeans, talk about you know, primary crops in the area, and also about what's yield and how big is a bushel, those types of things. A little bit more on the timeline for this particular agreement. We are obviously before you today. We are hoping to go to the Parks and Rec Board next week to talk to them about this as well. We've briefed them on a committee level, but looking to seek their recommendation to the City Council next week. We're hoping that we can come back to you in January to approve the lease, and then bid the project in February, complete construction by June, and then ultimately open the doors in July so that the community and our tourists and visitors to Sioux Falls could really enjoy this ag experience that Stockyards Plaza Inc. is proposing. And I might also share too is that, as many of you know, since the Arts Council left that building, it sat vacant for a long time. Several years ago we did an RFP to try to generate some interest, and hey, would somebody want to lease this from the city to be able to use it for some appropriate purpose, and really didn't get any takers. And so since that time we've been looking for the right fit, and we think with Jim and Susan and their efforts and their community support they've built for this particular project, we think it's a great fit, ties in well to Falls Park, the visitor center, and really has a lot of positive attributes to it. So again, we're here to answer any questions that you might have, and encourage you to also visit with Jim and Susan if you have any other questions about the specific exhibits or how this is going to be managed. Thank you.
Any questions for the council? Councilman Jameson.
Don, could you go back to the layout of the 2 floors?
This is the upper level.
Just, can you give me a number of square feet total in the building? Like I'm trying to get a scale of just, are we cramped for space or are we spread out?
You know, I might just ask Jim or Susan to maybe speak to that a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how many square feet, but they give you a better feel for whether they feel like they have adequate space or not.
Yes, Susan is the brains of this deal.
Yeah, I think that'd be better. Probably.
Yeah, everybody's aware of that.
You do that before you got up, Jim.
Just very quickly, and Don said just a real comment. I was there 43 years, and just very quickly, when they opened John Morell and Company about 108 years ago, and then 7 or 8 years later, the Stockyards came along, the guys came up out of Sioux City. It totally changed the face of agriculture in this area. No longer did the farmers have the choices of either butchering themselves or going to that little locker plant or 100 miles on gravel to Sioux City. They had a place that they could process cattle, hogs, and sheep that was just 40, 30, 20 miles away surrounding here. From that, these entrepreneurial farmers started expanding, and they added more cattle. And, of course, when that happened, we got zip feeds and GTA feeds and truck lines and railroads and banks. But the whole thing, that complex, and I'm bragging a little bit, and I'll call it the John Morell / Stockyards complex, just in reference to Kenny Baptist and Steve Krim. But so much of this city started down there, and I think people that know the history of it. And then the other thing I'd like to say is that we felt, and John Morell and Company and the Stockyards were kind of a branch of the chamber. very seldom did farmers and ranchers come to Sioux Falls that they didn't run uptown and purchase something. It was just, we always kept cash in our safe so that they could take a little bit of cash, borrow our car, and go up to, at that time, pennies or weather wax or whatever, and that just expanded. So, but we're really happy to be working on this, and just a thank you to the parks people and the city. We've had, Mike has helped us a lot, Mike Cooper and the parks people, and it's just really been a great deal. But again, Susan's father, Lee, and I don't want to embarrass her, but Lee Randall, a trucker, farmer, cattle feeder by Del Rapids, was a part of our market. He wasn't a member, but he was a legend down there. And when Susan, I asked her if she could help me, not only did she help, but she took off and took the lead. So go for it, Lee. We're here if you got any questions. Go ahead.
So, Councilor Jameson, responding to your question about the square footage, I don't know the exact square footage, but what I can say is that we're under a contract with the Siouxland Heritage Museum, and the exhibits that are being designed are designed specifically with the space that is there and that's available. So it's getting, essentially, the story that will be told is being right-sized for the space that's there.
Okay, that's good. I think the use is, myself, just perfect. It does tie all together. It just makes a lot of sense. You know, I can't help but probably ask about the operating expense total.
Sure.
I think I saw that it was $100,000.
Right.
Was it?
Our anticipation is $100,000 a year operating support. We're in the midst now of seeking candidates for the executive director position of the Stockyards Plaza Inc., our nonprofit. So far, all the work has been handled by volunteers and, of course, contracted services for expertise like the Siouxland Heritage Museum. The fee revenue that was referenced in the slide presentation will be very important to the sustainability of having staff that keep this vibrant, and both obviously staff the 2 floors of the museum, bring in volunteers, train and recruit them so that they can be add extra depth to the staffing of it. There will also be a full-time assistant once it's fully operational besides the executive director, and part-time of an educational specialist who will help with, we hope to find corporate sponsors to bring school groups in, so they'll have a chance to come in on field trips and learn not only the historic story of this important economic engine in Sioux Falls, but also the farm-to-table story, which is going to be a really important component of this.
And if I could, so the amount of revenue that you might expect to raise from the admission fees, are you thinking?
If I remember correctly, it's around $70,000 a year, and then the other parts of that budget will be coming from grants that we'll be writing, from corporate sponsorships for school groups, and eventually our intention is to establish an endowment at the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, so a portion of the revenue annually will come from there.
And then the only other one would be, maybe back to Don a little bit, would be the naming rights, or if there was some kind of a sponsorship, would there be a name, corporate name? Could there be potentially a corporate name added to this building?
Certainly could be. At this point, we have not contemplated that, but that certainly would be an option. But obviously, they have to go through the naming committee and then ultimately the city council for that building to be named.
It actually is an option. It's not as though it's prohibited. It's just it would have to go through the process.
Correct. Oh, correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Erickson?
Just one of the questions I had in regards to the admissions. I know, like, with the pavilion, we have, like, Free Friday or free, just an opportunity for the public to come that maybe wouldn't usually get to come. Just question in regards, I don't know if that's you or Susan, as far as making sure that's accessible to.
That's a really good point, and it is not an official policy the board of the Stockyards Plaza has adopted yet, but when we've kicked around, that maybe there be a Tuesday that's the free Tuesday or something. We are sensitive to that. Of course, the school group thing is something that we definitely want to raise funds to sponsor and support so school kids can come in. But the family time to get there is also important. We met with ag groups the other day at the barn, and Secretary of Agriculture Lucas Lynch hosted that. It was an inspiring time. They were excited to hear about it, and one of them was especially concerned about fees becoming an obstacle for people coming in, and understood that we had to cover the operating costs. So, you know, we can have further conversations with them about how we can come up with funds to plug that gap and at least make a day available, if not something greater than that.
An event of some sort. If I may ask one more follow-up. The museum, will it change or will it stay the same all the time? Similar, again, comparing it to the pavilion. With small children, we love when the pavilion changes it up because it's like a brand new museum again for us.
Right.
And we frequent it again and again and again. And so I didn't know if you would have options to bring in different.
That's a good point. We've talked with the Siouxland Heritage Museum about it. Essentially, a lot of it will have some length of life. Perhaps our agreement is 3 years, so we'll probably be thinking 3 years. But we also have a section of one of the exhibit areas that they're designing with the idea that that would be changing. So some would change, some would not. And then, of course, we also budgeted for repairs and fixes because exhibits need maintenance. And then the other component we hope to add into this is seminars, festivals, and activities that go on at the event. And that kind of gives continued fresh life, even if the exhibits themselves might not have as much of a fast change as you would see, for example, at the Siouxland Heritage Museum.
Right. One more small one, I'm sorry. I hate to admit it, I have not been to the farmer's market. Does this impact, is the farmer's market located on this property? Is it off to the side or is it?
Well, being a vendor at the Sioux Falls market, I can tell you that they don't conflict at all.
Okay.
The
it could be a
beautiful shelter
partnership.
is farther to the north from the parking lot and presence of the barn. They're compatible, but not conflicting. Okay. That would be my comment. And maybe Don Carney might want to comment.
That's okay. That's fine. That's sufficient. I just was curious how that flowed together with the different types of events, because this could be a unique opportunity to merge some of those, not merge, but, you know, complement.
Clearly complementary.
With the different type of agricultural events to do. So thank you.
Councilor Kiley.
And this might be a question more for Don. Don, it mentions a 3-year term for the proposed lease with the option of 2 more 3-year terms, so we could extend this out to 9. In addition to what SPI proposes to put in for funding all design and construction, which they estimate at $25,000, and then their responsibility for utilities and Wi-Fi and so forth, and their investment in the exhibits and their annual costs. Is there did I miss it in your presentation? Is there a dollar amount associated with that 3-year lease? In addition,
no.
a rent?
No, the rent essentially covering the cost of the utilities and the operational costs that currently we're paying to keep the building operational, because we do use it for some storage, and so we do keep some heat on. We do some things in there, winter work, those types of things, and so we have some existing costs, but our feeling is that if they could pay the utilities on the building, that would be their lease payment.
And it's been vacant for how long now?
4 or 5 years probably now.
So it's actually, and I do agree that it is going to provide a service to the citizens of Sioux Falls and to visitors too that come to Sioux Falls. And I would say that it goes hand in hand with the market that will be taking place just across the road to the north. I mean, a great opportunity for individuals to bring their children over or themselves over for a learning experience. I mean, obviously agriculture has played a very vital role in the founding of the city of Sioux Falls, and whole John Morrell played very important part of my life since my father was employed there for 36 years. So I do appreciate the concept and the opportunity. Thanks for the presentation.
You bet.
Any other questions, comments? Councilor Jameson.
Speaking of Morels, I got to tell a story. My uncle worked there forever, and every time I complained about a hard day or something about work, he said, "You haven't worked until you've worked a day at Morels," and stood there for 12 hours or something. So there is a long history. My question and thoughts are just thinking about it. Tell me, is there another facility in our inventory like this building that we would rent to somebody and then charge a fee? What is a good example of another Not just within maybe your own realm, but I mean others, if you can think of.
You know, the best example was probably when the Arts Council was in there, the same building. I'm struggling to come up with another building where we would lease it out to somebody else right off the top of my head. You know, we have ag leases, for example, where we actually have people, you know, hay crops for us and things like that, but nothing pops into my head.
The pavilion is owned by us, but it's still operated by a nonprofit.
Right.
We subsidize it.
Great Bear, you know, obviously that's an operational agreement, management agreement we have for that. The zoo obviously would be on a much larger scale, another example where we have a management agreement. But as far as the lease goes, this would be, other than the ag leases that we have, this is the one that, the only one I can really think of.
And then as well, if you could think about the concept of attendance. I mean, are you concerned, or if you thought about, will they have, let me ask you this, sorry. Has the conversation been had about whether the city contributed or gave an operating subsidy of some sort to help them and avoid an admission fee? Have you guys had that conversation at all?
You know, I think we went off the RFP that was originally issued, where we identified that anybody that wanted to lease that building from us, that the expectation would be that they would cover the operational costs. And so we just kind of spun off of that same concept where, you know, this is what we threw out to the community to get people to propose a proposed use for that building. And so we just kind of stepped off of that platform, and that's where we ended up.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
To continue on to that, Don, I was thinking the Overlook Cafe could be a good one there, where we do a lease there. But number one statement, I think it's a great ideal that we reinvest in that building. It's a key and a cog for Falls Park. But I guess I'd like to have Susan come back up again too, and just, if you would, Susan. This start here is sort of like a startup now that there are other things that are going to happen in the future, hopefully, if the vision happens. But this is a good start where you can start your fundraising and get this organization on its feet. Am I correct?
That's true, and have a real tangible service and product, in a sense, that people can begin to understand the potential of this vision.
And then, you know, like we said, we have the opportunity to do up to 9 years in leasing up to this point.
Right.
What do you envision in the future as far as the building that's still standing at the old stockyards? Could you say
I think
something
Jim
to
should
that,
speak
or
to
maybe
that.
Jim?
We'll invite Jim as well to
Thank you.
offer some of his.
The Big White Exchange Building, we took, two things happened. In my grandiose ideas, so you move that, and then to Don's credit, he said, you know, we don't need a big building like that. And then after we looked at it, he was right. It's a building that Gene Pesca owns a property, is still undecided what he's going to do with. Last I talked to him, there's a hunting operation up north, but it won't be there. It's going to go, darn it. I mean, but it has to. It's an old building, and it's just, we've been through it about in the last 2 months, a couple, 3 times, make sure we're not missing an artifact or something. And you forget when you work there all those years how bad I mean, it's just a building that would not serve a purpose down at our place. And that's why when they started talking to us about the park, it just was perfect, the horse barn. It filled every need that we had as far as an indoor facility that would be a place that we could do the artifacts and the living history and the photos and all of that stuff. But I'm not speaking for Gene, but the last I heard, it will go somewhere at some point off in that property.
So then this is envisioned as your permanent home then?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I don't. It's such a perfect spot, and then I believe Christine commented on the farmers market right across the street, or someone did. It's just, yeah. And then when we get the plaza down and all this, it's. I won't be here that long, but it will be. I'm convinced. So, and we appreciate your interest, you guys. I mean that sincerely, really do.
Well, thank you very much. All right. Next presentation, will be American Dream Coalition Conference Report by Councilor Kermit Staggers. Rex.
Well, several weeks ago, I went to Austin, Texas, for the American Dream Coalition meeting. Now, many people really do not know what this is all about, the American Dream Coalition. So I hope today we can provide some information here for you to understand what this is all about. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand while I'm speaking. The term American Dream conveys many different images. Raising a family, owning your own home, traveling to see new adventures on the open road, starting a successful business. All of these images depend on the personal and economic freedom that Americans take for granted. When government interferes with our freedom, it makes the American dream less attainable for some or all of Americans. The American dream government is excellent, wrote Henry David Thoreau. Yet, this government never of itself further any enterprise, but by audacity with which it got out of its way. To protect everyone's American dream, the American Dream Coalition supports giving people freedom of choice in how they use their land and what forms of transportation they use, provided only that people pay the full cost of their choices. We do not advocate that people drive everywhere or live in low-density suburbs, but we believe that these are legitimate choices. We do not oppose high-density housing or public transit, but we do oppose planning efforts that attempt to force high-density housing on people or to build wildly expensive rail transit lines that few people will ride. The Guide to the American Dream will examine several important topics: automobility, transit, congestion, housing, land use, open space, air pollution, and public safety. As appropriate for each topic, the guide will, first of all, present our positions. Secondly, demystify popular myths. And thirdly, analyze the best available data. Most of the guide is in the form of web pages, but these pages link to some files that are PDFs, word processor documents, Excel spreadsheets, or powerful slideshows. Nearly all of the linked files are on the American Dream Coalition's website, so there should be no broken links. Now let's begin to take a look at this on November 20th, 2015, the American Dream Coalition Conference, Austin, Texas. The future of affordability. This was the theme of the 2015 American Dream Conference. It took place on November 6th through November 8th. It included experts on housing, land use, transportation, and grassroots organizing. This conference was designed to help deal with issues like smart growth, new urbanism, rail transit, and traffic calming. Now, in dealing with these issues that I just mentioned, we took a tour of the Austin area, reviewing Austin land use, and also transportation projects. Then Friday evening, we had a presentation by U.S. Congressman Blake Freenhold from the 7th Congressional District, dealing with the federal role in transportation. And then the next day, Saturday morning, the topic was Everything's Bigger in Texas, with Vance Jen of the Texas Public Policy Foundation on Texas tax structure. Also, we heard a presentation by James Quintera of the Texas Public Policy Foundation on Texas housing costs, and Ginger Gooden of the Texas A&M Transportation Institute on Texas transportation funding. And then on Saturday, we had various sessions with different speakers, with speakers ranging from Mark Scribner of the Competitive Enterprise Institute on self-driving cars, to Ron Utt, an independent consultant on performance-based state transportation systems. And his presentation was basically, be careful what you wish for. Saturday, we also had a presentation dealing with taxis and ride sharing and the future of affordability regarding housing and transportation. With speakers, Megan Forbes from the Institute for Justice, Jesse Hathaway from the Heartland Institute, Wendell Cox, an independent consultant, and Baruch Feigenbaum from the Reason Foundation. With topics on ethanol, the wetlands, and the cost of land use planning and growth management, we dealt with some Saturday land use issues. Saturday evening, we had a debate on government-funded rail transit expansion in Austin, with Dave Dobbs of Austin Rail Now for, and Thomas Rubin, an independent consultant, against. We also dealt with problematic projects, the San Antonio streetcar, the Texas Rail, the Austin Rail extension, and the Tampa Rail proposal. Let me just mention that when we were there in Austin, there was a conversation about how much money would be spent on the Texas Rail. And it was discovered that we were not going to spend very much money on the Texas Rail. The Austin Rail extension, well, that was also another one we debated too, because we had a situation where we had members of the American Dream Coalition taking a look at the cost of the rail extension in the cost of the rail extension in Austin, and we discovered that it costs quite a bit of money. In fact, we had a situation where it cost about rail extension that cost quite a bit of money. And also the Tampa rail proposal too. So in other words, what I'm trying to say here about the Texas rail extension is it was very, very expensive, very expensive. And then eventually, let me mention that even though it was very expensive, taking a look at the rail extension, it was very interesting because what happened is that the cost for this was like $1 a night. So it was extremely expensive, and despite that fact, we do have the city council advocating education for councilmen and councilwomen. So basically what we have here is a situation where we have the cost of the rail being very expensive, and at the same time that it's very expensive, we have calls for having an extension of the rail line, an extension that cost approximately, approximately $12 a week, and needless to say, this cost a lot of money. But even though this is costing lots of money, the rail line, the operation of the customer advocacy of the rail line itself, even though it cost expensive, it was well worth it to be able to partake in the rail line. And also at the same time, once again, it was invaluable for the city of Austin to provide this opportunity for us to be able to know, when the council city line was before us, and to have us be able to take a look at what it really was like. But overall, once again, this provided an opportunity for us, in fact, for all of us partaking in this conference, to be able to take part in the city line in Boston. Well, not Boston, but in the city line of Austin, Texas. Finally, let me mention one other thing about Austin before I stop, and that is, to my great surprise, Austin was a city that was much larger than I had dreamed of. I realized beforehand that Austin was a large city, but I didn't realize how large until we got there. And then when we got there, I was very surprised to discover how large the city of Austin was. And with the large size of Austin, I was greatly surprised, but at the same time, I was able to have a better understanding of exactly what Austin was like. And once again, Austin is a very large city, very large city. But at this time, does anybody have any questions?
Questions from the council? I see none.
Okay.
I'll have one for you,
Okay,
Counselor.
fine, thank you.
Okay. When they were discussing over the affordability of transportation, and you were discussing over these rail extensions, was the cost deemed too high due to the ridership, or was that what they were looking at? Was that the ridership wasn't going to be enough to offset the cost?
Well, a primary concern is that the ridership was not going to be great enough. And so the result is that there was a concern that with the ridership, it would not be sufficient to cover the cost of the operation itself. And so that was a concern, and that continued to be a concern throughout the duration of the conference.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? None.
Okay, thank you very much.
Counselor.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with the presentation's over, I need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor
Mr. Chairman, how's that?
Okay.
I would move that we go into executive session pursuant to Personnel Matters, South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2-1.
And can we get a second on that? All right, with that, we will move into executive session. I'll have to ask everyone to clear the room now, please.